host of The Big Picture, Thom Hartmann. Thank you.
Thanks, Christina.
Thank you.
And well, I think that this country is in big trouble.
While everyday people are being thrown under the bus, and the political establishment is actually making it worse.
It was brilliant. Today, a factory, our first question, today a factory in Freeport, Illinois, that belongs to Sensata Technology. Literally today, right now as we speak.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing in Sensata, in that experience, where Bain Capital actually...
Johnson.
Well, first of all, I think free trade is really a good thing. So let's separate free trade from jobs. Free trade is the notion that goods and services cost less because of competition.
The top 1%, which would be one person in that room of 100 people, now has 40 loaves of bread.
Corporate tax rate by nibbles, let's just get rid of it. Create a level playing field, do away with the IRS, imagine no deductions, imagine how simplified our lives become, not having to comply with IRS regulations.
Are we done? Okay. So moving on to the second.
Well, look, that's baloney. It's absolutely baloney. Corporate tax rates have been going up. I would just ask the question, why not take corporate tax rates to 70%? Why not just take it all the way straight to 100%?
Are you concerned about the size and lack of checks and balances of the international banking system? Would you make any reforms to rein in the powers of Wall Street, the Federal Reserve, and the rest of the global financial system?
Governor Johnson?
Look, I think the reason, no, I don't think it's an issue of regulation or laws. It's the fact that Wall Street made some incredibly bad decisions that they should have been rewarded for those decisions by having been allowed to fail.
Dr. Jill Stein, please.
Yeah, you know, the question made the connection between the collapse of our economy here and the global economic collapse, crisis, if you will, world over.
Does U.S. influence make the world a more or less safe place? And what about women?
And human rights, and we expect to see cooperation along those principles from all who might consider themselves our allies going forward in the future. And in fact withdrew from Iraq only because it was George Bush's date of withdrawal. He tried his hardest to extend that date, allies in wars for oil, to a foreign policy actually based on international law, human rights, and diplomacy.
Man-made climate change, and that it's whacking us. What's the appropriate role of the federal government, and more specifically the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, in responding to that?
Well, first of all, as a libertarian, I want to point out that I think that FEMA could be drastically reduced in size and that contracts could be prearranged.
Do you think organizations like WikiLeaks are a threat to national security? And if you're elected president, what type of secrets would your administration protect?
Tell me if I'm right or wrong. Do I understand that you would like to see the government take over the internet?
I hear you asking the question, do I support net neutrality? And absolutely I do. I think there are so many viewers out there and so many in the American public who've come to rely on the internet.
Net neutrality is actually promoted to be the things that you're talking about, but I would suggest that it's one of those areas of crony capitalism that actually, as opposed to what the government says it will be, it's really promotion of those that are already entrenched in the internet and have interest, and that interest will in fact grow and become a monopoly. You've got Obama and Romney arguing over whether the corporate tax rate should be dropped from 27 or 25, both arguing that this will create more jobs. I agree with them, but how about zero? How about eliminating corporate tax? How about eliminating income tax? I am talking about the fair tax.
Thank you. Well, you know, we can see where this policy has taken us. We deserve a foreign policy based on international law, human rights, and diplomacy. Unfortunately, we currently have an international policy based on wars for oil and the use of brute military force as a tool of foreign policy. And we see that this is basically blowing up in our faces right now. So, you know, this policy is not working. We need to say no to these wars for oil. We need an international policy that raises the bar for everyone. Please.
Well, we should do unto others as we would have others do unto us. That should be the United States influence. The influence the United States should have should be the beacon on the hill. The notion that we've been the country that stood up to the bully as opposed to being the bully. Well, we're the bully right now. I absolutely believe that because of our military interventions, we have hundreds of millions of enemies to this country that we wouldn't otherwise have. Foreign aid is something that should stop. We're building roads, schools, bridges, and highways halfway around the planet when we have those same needs here in this country. Let's stop with foreign aid, and let's recognize that foreign aid is not as we've grown up to believe it is. Foreign aid is propping up foreign governments that really it's poor people in this country giving to rich people in other countries.
There is a role for foreign aid, but regrettably, most of our foreign aid right now is military aid. And that form of aid comes back to haunt us. We're actually throwing gasoline on the fires of every ethnic, religious, and national conflict virtually around the world by this very aggressive policy of sending arms all around the world. I am the only candidate in this race that will solve the problem of climate change. If you want to solve that problem and not go forward on this trajectory towards climate disaster that we're now on, go to the polls and vote for a green solution on November 6th.
Fundamentally, no, I do not see WikiLeaks as a threat. I believe in transparency. But let's us be out there front line telling the truth on these issues first and foremost.
That is our right to know what our government is doing. That is part of our right as citizens. And I think there's no greater threat to our security than that kind of secrecy. We've looked at the use of the FBI and Homeland Security against the Occupy movement. And the coordination of militarized police forces to violate the civil rights and the civil liberties, and especially the First Amendment rights of the Occupy movement. The Occupy movement represents the abuse of a generation of students who've been turned into indentured servants who are carrying high debt around.